was younger, I used to live by the woods and could see a cemetery from my back porch. One Easter, I remember waking up and seeing the Easter Bunny, one of those terrifying costumes. And what really gets me is I remember smelling the wet hay. When I woke up, I didn't tell anyone, but there was an extra Easter egg in my house that my parents didn't hide. Years later, when I was in high school, I asked my parents if they ever dressed up like the Easter Bunny and came into our room. They said they would never go through so much trouble though. Then my younger sister, who I shared a bunk bed with when this happened, said she remembers when the Easter Bunny came into our room and made a remark about the hay smell. I was terrified that we both remembered seeing a person dressed as a bunny in our own room. To make it even stranger, I told the friends I sat with at lunch what happened. One of the girls was my neighbor across the street. She told me one Easter a long time she looked out of her window during the night and saw the Easter Bunny standing in her driveway. I had chills. To this day, I'm terrified of people in rabbit costumes. I was in my sophomore year of high school. I usually get ready and then wait for my mother to drive me to school. While she was getting ready, I was just kind of hanging out in the bathroom with her while she was putting on makeup and curling her hair. She looked a little frazzled and I asked if everything was okay. She told me about a weird occurrence the night before. She told me that she had been woken up at around 2 a.m. by a strange noise. It wasn't super loud, but it was pretty constant. My dad wasn't woken up by it, though it's not surprising as he sleeps like a log. Anyway, she starts looking for the source of the noise, first checking the bathroom attached to their room, but there isn't anything in there. Next, she walks out into the hall and hears the noise from the bathroom nearby. When she walks in, she sees a hairdryer plugged in and turned on, just sitting in the middle of the bathroom mat on the floor. She thinks it's strange, but there are 4 kids living in the house and she thought maybe someone had slept walk and turned it on. Whatever. She goes back to bed and eventually falls asleep. About an hour later, she wakes up again and hears the same noise. She's kind of pissed off and goes to check it out again. Except, now the noise is from downstairs. She tracks it down into the guest bathroom in the main entry hall. My parents' house has like 4 bathrooms. She opens the door and again, there's a hairdryer turned on, laying in the middle of the floor. She's freaked out by this point, but she unplugs it and puts it away. She didn't get a great night's sleep after that. So she's telling me this story, and as soon as she comes to the conclusion, we both just freeze and turn our heads into the walk-in closet off her bathroom. As soon as we look in, the entire light on the ceiling shatters. Not the light bulb, but the glass cover. It shatters, sending shards of glass everywhere. We were both freaked out and got the heck out. We didn't know what to make of it, but we haven't really had any experiences before or since, and none of my family have experienced anything yet either. While I was in college, I loved finding snakes. I was a biology student, so a friend from herpetology club showed me this road that he would cruise snakes for. Cruising is when you drive slowly down old back roads after dark, looking for snakes that have slithered onto the warmer roads to heat up. The roads we took was about 4 miles and it had 4 houses on its entirety. We had taken a few laps on this road and we were making our final pass. There are 2 houses near the beginning of the road, one at the end and one in the middle. We were getting close to the center house when we see the movement on the left side of the road. There are a lot of animals obviously on this road, so we aren't surprised to see this. However, what shoots out is this kid, probably around 8 or 9 in torn blue jeans and a ripped dark t-shirt. He takes one look at us and his face is a mix of fear and pain. He looked back really quickly from where he had come out of and then booked it across the road. The guy I'm with gets out of the car chasing to see if he's alright, and I pull the car up to the point where the boy went into the woods. I'm starting to get out of the car when my friend walks quickly back from the trail and just says, "Let's go now." We hop in the car and tear out of there. He says there's a graveyard about 10 yards into the woods where there are 5 gravestones with the same death date. They all the same last name, and one was a boy who was 9. We never came back the rest of the summer to that road. We usually would go out there once or twice a week. The next year when my friend had graduated, I took my girlfriend out to the road. We had gone early to try to find different types of snakes. Different snakes tend to move at different points of dusk and night. We got to the house near the graveyard, and these 3 men were doing some yard work. I rolled down my window and explained what I was doing and asked them about the graveyard. Apparently their dad's brother's family all died there when their space heater caught fire around 20 years ago. I kept pushing and asking about it, and they told me the firemen had found all the bodies in the rubble except for the youngest son, but they assumed he was far too burned. I asked if he had a little brother, and the 6'4", 250-pound man said he was the youngest. When I gave the description of the kid I saw, they all went white. They all have individually seen the kid I was talking about, and he always runs to the gravesite. I've never been down that road again. When I was about 10 or 12, I don't really remember, I had an odd experience. At the time, I was sharing a room with my sister. We had lofted beds, and I slept in the top bunk. We had this stereo, and when you would press the button to turn it on, it would click, and a red light would pop up. Our beds are on one side of the room, and the stereo was on a desk on the opposite side. One night, I was woken up by the click sound that the stereo makes when the power button is pressed. I recognized the sound and sat up in my bed. I looked over at the stereo, and the light blinks on. I looked over at my sister, and she is fast asleep. Her bed was under mine, but perpendicular, so I can see the top half of her bed from my bed. The stereo is playing that white noise sound that it makes when it isn't on a specific station. But suddenly, I can hear something saying, "Away," coming from the stereo. Just one word. "Away." First it starts off soft and gradually gets louder, until it becomes a yell. "Away, away, 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 away." It took about 10 to 15 seconds probably to build up to the yell, and then it died back down to a whisper. I thought this was a dream. I was frozen out of fear. I thought this had to be my imagination, and I tried telling myself that during the whole thing. I'd almost convinced myself of it until it stopped. After the voice died away, the stereo went back to static. Then I heard the familiar click sound as the light turned off. I was positive I wasn't dreaming the ending click. I stared at the stereo for a few more moments, too freaked to move, looked back at my sister and saw she was still asleep, and finally laid back in bed, covered myself with the sheets, and willed myself back to sleep. I consider myself a rational person, but I have no rational explanation for this. Freakiest shit that has ever happened to me. My fiance and I rent a house together, and we live alone. About 2 years ago, my fiance and I were laying in bed. It was actually pretty late in the morning, like 10:30 or 11 a.m. or so. About 10 or 15 minutes, and my fiance was just waking up. We lied there, talking softly about whether or not we should get up yet or try to go back to sleep for a bit, since he had the first half of the day off work, and it might be nice to catch up on sleep since we had a couple busy days ahead of us. He was lying on his back, staring up at the ceiling, and I was on my right side facing him, with my hand on his chest while we talked. In that position, I had my back to our bedroom door, which was maybe 8 or 9 feet away from the bed behind me. Suddenly, an odd feeling came over the room. Seriously, it felt like the air in the room was either suddenly sucked out or made very, very heavy, and it almost felt like I was underwater or gravity changed. And the room seemed to almost feel like it was tilting to the side. It felt like the air in the room was pressing down on top of my body, while at the same time slowing down time and making me dizzy and loopy. My ears were actually popping. Well, I thought it was just me feeling this, and for a moment I wonder if I was having a blood pressure drop. I get those sometimes, though it still wasn't quite what I felt. But my fiance said in a very frightened voice that sounded like he couldn't breathe very well, and like he couldn't get the words out without struggling. "Do you feel that too? What's happening?" And that's when I knew something odd and scary was going on, because he was feeling the exact same thing. I tried to speak, but my speech actually came out kind of slurred, and I had to force the words out of my mouth and say, "I don't know. I can't move." He said, "I can't either." I saw him trying to turn over onto his side and trying to raise his arm up. He just kept saying, "What's happening? What's happening?" I tried to raise my arm up too and found that I couldn't. Again, it was like being underwater in an intensely pressurized room. I started trying to push myself up to see if I could sit up. I couldn't do it. It was just too heavy. Then we both heard the doorknob of our bedroom door turning. It was turning over and over again, almost like someone was trying to come in, but they weren't jiggling it or trying to open the door. It was actually turning in a rhythm. It was turning back and forth in a rhythm at about the same tempo as a metronome, like a beat to a song. It was very deliberate. We were both terrified and we froze. The first thought in my mind was that someone had broken in, though I couldn't figure out why they would turn the doorknob back and forth in a deliberate rhythm. Especially because our bedroom door had no lock on it. They could just open it and walk right in. We couldn't move. That weird, heavy gravity feeling that was holding us down still would not allow us to move, but I was trying to, and I could feel my fiance trying to as well. All I was able to do was turn my head very slowly and look over my shoulder at the doorknob and watch it turning. I could see it. Then, we both heard it. singing. Two children's voices, what sounded like a pair of young girls, started singing a song that I could not make out most of the lyrics to, and the only clear lyrics that I could make out was the very last word at the end of the sentence. Dancing. So let me clarify what I'm trying to describe. These two young girls' voices were singing an almost nursery rhyme type song outside our bedroom door while turning our bedroom doorknob back and forth to match the tempo of what they're singing. The doorknob is going chick as these little girls' voices are singing something, 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 dancing, something, 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 dancing. And the doorknob would turn with each word they sang, keeping perfect rhythm. I couldn't make out nearly any of the other words of the song they were singing, except for the word dancing at the very end of each stanza. And they were singing it in a way that was kind of playful and taunting. Maybe, for instance, kind of like two little girls would do if they were teasing an older sibling or their mom or dad by coming up to their room they're in, shaking the doorknob and singing at them, just to tease. The song almost sounded made up, the way kids sometimes sing little made up songs to be silly or playful. Just trying to give you a feeling as to how this sounded. It also sounded like they were laughing or trying not to giggle while they were doing it. So as this was all going on, I'm watching the doorknob turn as these voices sing at us. And nearly the end of the song, I turn my head in slow motion back to my fiance to see if he's seeing and hearing the same thing I am. And I can now see he's finally managed to able to turn his head and he's watching the doorknob too. And the look on his face was just, I'll never forget it. His eyes were as big as dinner plates. I'll never see him that shocked or that scared. His face was just white. And then the song ended. It was short, just 2 stanzas. Then just as soon as it started, the doorknob just stopped turning on the very last word of the song. Dancing. And all at once, that heavy, dizzy weight that had been holding us down, making it so hard to move and breathe, just lifted. Just went away, just like that. Suddenly we could move again, and the air and the gravity felt normal. It seriously was all over, from start to finish, in about 10 seconds. My fiance sat up and goes, "What the hell just happened?" And he jumped over me and out of bed and raced the door and yanked it open. Nothing was there. We don't have a hallway, it's a small house, and our bedroom door opens right up into our living room. He just looked out into it and goes, "Nobody's out there." I got up and ran over to him and looked for myself. No one's there. House empty, and our 2 cats were both backed up against the far wall of the living room, hissing and growling. They've either heard it too, or even seen what did it. And from the spot right in front of our bedroom door, all the way to the living room, through the dining room, and out to the kitchen door, there was this trail of heat. I don't know how else to describe it. It was just a trail of heat. The air just felt hot and oily, and you could almost see a haze like fog trailing from our bedroom door through the house to the kitchen door. We checked both the front door and the kitchen door, locked. Both locked. We both sat down on the bed and were just shaking. We kept asking each other, did that just really happen? We both heard the same thing, right? And yeah, we both felt the air pressure holding us down in bed and making us move in slow motion. We both heard and saw the bedroom door knob moving back and forth in rhythm when we both heard the 2 little girls singing that song. So I know it wasn't a hallucination or anything. The only difference was my fiance understood a couple more of the lyrics of what they were singing, though not many. He said it sounded something like, "And we come in a-dancing," or "And we go a-dancing." It was just so unsettling and spooky. To be honest, that the way the girls' voices sound, they didn't sound mean or creepy. It seriously sounded like 2 real little girls who were just having fun and teasing us. It didn't feel or sound malevolent or anything. It still creeped us out, just that it happened though. We were both shaken up for the rest of the day, and I begged him not to leave to go to work that afternoon, but he had to. The whole time he was at work, I kept every light on in the house, along with both the TVs in the living room and our bedroom. It never happened again, but it still creeps us both out just talking about it.